All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the replay of this session we're going to hold on how to remember names, any names that you may encounter in the world. And let me know in the chat if you're joining us live where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. I see Hamad is here. Thanks for being here. Thanks for saying hello. Hit the thumbs up and let me know how things are with your name memory. And we've got a special $10,000 contest announcement. So if you want to save this link or go there now to magneticmemorymethod.com/win and then come back, you're going to have the opportunity to be in a room where you will have the finest names to memorize in the world. And if you're an entrepreneur or you're starting a business, you want to start a business, this is going to be a huge opportunity for you. So if that sounds interesting to you, we're going to talk about that and I'll show you a few things. But this is a training session on this live. So Julie's here. Hi, Julie. Thanks for saying hello. Be engaged, be interactive. Let me know what your history is with names, what any general memory questions that you have, memory training, and so forth, because memorizing names is one of the most incredible skills that you can ever develop, and it is the skill that will enable you to do so much better in life, whether you're an entrepreneur or a student or whatever your calling may be in medicine, in law. Everything's business, right? Everything is about your ability to sell yourself and to contribute to the world and make the world a better place. And one of the best ways that you can do that is by remembering people's names. It is the most fundamental skill that there really is, because after that, you're going to be able to say thank you to that person. Like, thank you, Julie, who's here now, for this cup. Always be yourself, unless you can be Batman, and then always be Batman, you know. And Julie and we have a special relationship through the Magnetic Mary Method world, but also, you know, being able to remember her name and to, you know, have that thank you, always that gratitude, makes it extra special when you remember people by name. And I'm gonna have a drink from this very special cup. But everything is about selling yourself. It's about being the highest possible version of yourself so that you are accepted by other people at the highest possible level. So Julie has an LOL for that, and Vanessa's here with another LOL from Idaho. Great to have you here, Vanessa. And you know, just since we're speaking about names, when I see a name like Vanessa, I think about was her name Vanna White from so long ago, The Wheel of Fortune, you know, and I start to put something together already in my mind. And maybe now I'm going to see, I remember my friend Rick back in the day, he had this crazy van, and it was a really crazy van, and we'll see it on The Wheel of Fortune. And then I'll remember this name, or at least start the stages for remembering it. And it's a very, very powerful skill. So who here actually knows how to memorize names? Has anybody, let me know in the chat, has anybody gone to an event where you've memorized, say, between 10 and 20 names of the people there? Let me know. And if the answer is no, type in the chat, no, but yes, I want that skill, right? And you can go up from 20 to 30, hundreds of names if you want, but it's a really fundamental skill. But I'd love to know, amongst those who are joining us now in the chat, let me know where in the world you're from, and if you have that ability already, if you'd like to improve that ability with some tips, and if not, are you excited to get it? Let me know in the chat. Vanessa says, Julie rocks. Yes, Julie does rock. She's an amazing person. A very nice experience always receiving emails from her and having her on the chat. And maybe we'll get to one of her recent correspondences soon, because it's very, very interesting for the digital amnesia topic. But you know, being able to remember people's names is a huge part of being more personable and having more confidence in yourself, which is a very good thing to have, because you're going to be walking into rooms with a completely different attitude than if you can't do that. And you're just going to feel so much courage and clarity in your mind, because you know that you're going to connect with people at a much deeper level. It's really, really huge. So Hamad says, "Can I participate too? I'm from Pakistan." Absolutely. You know, this whole contest that we're doing, Jonathan Levy, he's my business partner over at Branding You Academy. He's also a great friend of the Magnetic Memory Method, and he and I have helped promote each other many, many times and supported each other in the memory work that we do, because we're both the real deal with these techniques, and we really care about the people that we serve. And we got together over the years, and we just said, we can help people also make their businesses memorable. And so that's what Branding You Academy is all about. And how that they can avoid a lot of the mistakes that we wound up making along the way and just jump to the head of the line. And that's part of what this 10K ticket is all about. So down here, you'll see a link, magneticmarymethod.com/win, and you'll have a video there that Jonathan put together for you about how you can be in the right room to memorize the right names that can accelerate your business so much. If you're in business or if you want to start a business, this is the room to be in. You'll be there with Jonathan, and he is a great memory trainer. And you can't get Jonathan to train you personally anymore. He just doesn't do it. He doesn't offer a coaching. He doesn't really offer business consulting, except for when you get the two of us together in Branding You Academy. So magneticmarymethod.com/win will get you all the information about that. And you're going to have the opportunity to meet with people like Joe Polish, and he holds something called the Genius Network events. And it's kind of an interesting thing, but I'm pretty sure that Jonathan joined Joe Polish's Genius Network, which costs $25,000 a year, and he even ended up paying more so that his right hand man Brandon could go as well. I think that was another 10K, and this is just something I'm pretty sure that I urged Jonathan in that direction, because I was always like, you got to listen to the I Love Marketing podcast. It's like an MBA, and Jonathan's like, I already got an MBA, and I'm like, no, you don't have an MBA in this kind of thing with marketing. It's such a beautiful podcast. So if you don't know it, you've got to go and check it out. It's I Love Marketing podcast, amazing. And I just a shout out to Joe Polish to thank him for there's a story that Jonathan will tell you about the origin of this contest, and so you want to check that out at magneticmarymethod.com/win. But I'm personally grateful to Joe Polish, and there's a mysterious and strange reason why that I didn't just take that ticket for myself, and we came up with this idea of making it a contest. And of course, we have Joe Polish's support, and everything behind that is thanks to him. And a lot of what I know is thanks to the I Love Marketing podcast. And a shout out to Dean Jackson as well, who I'm going to see in Sydney in a couple weeks at his private mastermind group. So one of the things about remembering names, and when you connect with these people deeper, you're able to be connected with them deeper, and it really impresses people when you walk your walk, and you walk your talk, or however that phrase goes. A little blip of memory there. But when you're able to actually stand in front of a room and name all the people, this is an incredible display of the power that you have. And the number one question I love to ask when I do it is, who else here can do that? And I've never seen anybody else say, yes, I can, until after I trained them. And then they all say, yes, we can. And it's an amazing thing, because it's such a powerful skill to have. So we're going to talk about that today. Hit the thumbs up if you haven't already. Let me know in the chat, if you haven't already, where you're from in the world, and if you are a hell yeah for this contest. $10,000 ticket to join Jonathan Levy at Joe Polish's Genius Network event. And you can't buy your way into this because of the special nature of it. So this is a very, very exclusive opportunity. People like Peter Diamandis are involved in Genius Network. There's so many names. Kurzweil is there, or has been there. We don't know exactly who all is going to be there. Tony Robbins even goes to these things sometimes, and it's an absolutely incredible thing. The list of names is amazing, and this is the kind of room that you want to be in. Now, of course, the catch is that you're not going to necessarily need to remember all those names, because you'll know a lot of them already. But the amazing thing is there's a lot of entrepreneurs you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. So there's like a lot of names that I don't know that Jonathan is now introducing me to, and it's absolutely incredible to start to learn those names, because when you learn about their businesses and what they're doing for the world, you're like, how the heck did I didn't know these people? And then you get to know them real quick. So let me check in with the chat here. So Vanessa says, Julie rocks again, yeah, and Vanessa confirms that her nickname is Vanna White. A good and bad one, yeah. And had to often teach in grad school. Okay, well, grad school is a great thing. I'm a big supporter of students. I went to grad school myself for years and years and years, so great to have you here. Julie says, When I'm working on a film set, there are usually 60 to 120 people involved. I'm mortified when I have a friend visit the set because I know I will need to make introductions. Well, Julie, uh, this is a great thing. You have the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass and can go through the names course again. But one of the things to do is, just start with some exercises and enable yourself to exercise one name at a time. So you don't have to start with the whole 120 introductions and so forth. But if you just start, then you'll get that courage and that confidence and clarity. And I started one name at a time, and it's actually one of the secrets. When people they feel overwhelmed by all the names and all the numbers rather, you have to understand that there's no need to be overwhelmed. You're always memorizing one name at a time, one person at a time, and making that connection one person at a time. And it's happening deep in the chemical neural networks of your brain. And you really want to treat it as one name at a time. And when you focus on just that one name at a time, then you will get to dozens, you will get to hundreds, but one at a time. That's the beauty of it. And the speed that you can develop happens still by practicing one name at a time. So we always teach at Magnetic Memory Method to not get hung up in the numbers. It's easy to exaggerate, to create fear, to create anxiety, to create issues around that, but that's not going to help your brain. What helps your brain is to be relaxed, calm, focused, and assertive ultimately, because you've got like this black dog of fear and anxiety that wants to come. It wants to be there. But like any dog, you have the alpha who is going to control the behaviors of the rest of the pack. Or if the alpha doesn't stand up and be assertive, then those little dogs are going to run havoc, and every one of them is going to compete to be in control of the situation. And that's what fear and anxiety and worry and concern and exaggerating the numbers can do to you. And you'll never be the confident, assertive master alpha memory, right? If you don't just acknowledge those other little puppies running around, doing their thing, and then just use the techniques with calm, focus, clarity, and precision through the practice of the techniques, and just let go of the outcome. Don't worry about too much. If you get hung up on accuracy, then you're gonna have all those little dogs biting at your heels, distracting you, and removing the fun of being the alpha memory. The one on top. I don't want to take the alpha dog thing too much as a metaphor, but I think you get what I mean, the parallel, the analogy that I'm trying to make. So if you can just remember that, there's one leader of the pack, and that's you, right? And if you put up with all those other dogs nipping at your heel, well, who's responsible for that? It's you. So just take command. Be assertive over your memory. Your memory is a thing that can be focused and in many, many ways controlled. It can be controlled beyond what I ever even imagined possible, especially when you throw meditation and relaxation into the mix. I didn't even know to what extent that it could be controlled until I added those things at deeper and deeper levels. And of course, one thing to understand and realize too is that memorizing names is the skill to memorize anything, because what is anything other than the name for the thing that it refers to, right? So when people ask about abstractions, well, how do you memorize abstractions? You give the abstractions a name, and then you memorize them, right? Because you use the tools of association from there. So let me check in with the chat here because there's some interesting ones coming in. Vanessa says, some people look alike, to which makes it tough. No, there's techniques for that. Julie says, I have to coach my friend by saying I don't know anyone's name. Please introduce yourself. It's a horrible feeling, particularly if you had quite a personal recent conversation with them. Yeah, I can imagine. And again, think of that feeling as one of those puppies, one of those out of control little puppies that you can control. Just say, there's that feeling, back end of the line. You have a place, and that place is over there. And just push it aside, because the way to deal with it is just to acknowledge it and then move on to developing the skills to not having that feeling. And we'll talk a little bit more about this today. Julie says, yes, I agree with one name at a time. It does mean so much to call someone by their name. And Julie says, it keeps me much more present with a focus on remembering someone's name. Great, great. Yeah. So presence is a huge part of it, right? And that's the beauty of memory techniques, especially names. Like names are the one where you really are memorizing in real time more than any other. um, and you're present. You're practicing present and you're feeling present. And it's so edifying, it's elucidating, it's enlightening to be there with that one person. And yes, maybe the person looks a little bit similar to another person. I've been in rooms where there are five Christians, right? And that's a woo, and it's like a Christian, and so forth. And that's a bit of a challenge. And then, sometimes maybe some spelling is involved and there's odd spellings. There's pronunciations that you have to deal with, but it's so exciting to be present with them in that moment and just to take it as a game, to take it as a fun challenge. And if you make a mistake, just, hey, I'm a person who works on improving my memory. Sorry, I mispronounced that. Or could you just let me know again? I didn't quite hear it. Or, I don't want to get I don't want to dishonor your name. I work on my memory. I tried to memorize it, but I didn't quite catch it. Could you just repeat it so that I can do it? Like, there's 1,000 variations on that. Just be relaxed, be calm, be cool. The person will really appreciate it, and if they don't, well, then what kind of person are they, right? They certainly do not deserve the Batman mask if they are going to freak out about that. So it's attitude. So much is attitude. Speaking of this current contest, one of the great names that I learned of from being a listener to the I Love Marketing podcast is the name Gary Halbert. And Halbert always talked about having a fighter pilot attitude. So if you want to know more about this 10K contest where you have the opportunity to be in a room where you're going to memorize some very, very interesting names, go to magneticmarymethod.com/win, and you will be educated about what that opportunity is. And we certainly hope that you take us up on that offer, because if you are currently a business owner or you're an entrepreneur in the making, you're absolutely going to benefit from this opportunity, this contest, and Jonathan shares all the details there. Just so that you know what you're looking at, let me see if I can do some whiz bang stuff with the technology here. And there you go. So that's what the page looks like. That's what the video looks like. You don't want to miss it. You won't miss it because it's yellow. And I really think it's a fun video to watch. I think it's one of the most exciting videos that I've seen in a long time. And remember the name Joe Polish. How could you remember the name Joe Polish? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in case that you haven't instantly memorized it already or you didn't know it before. But he plays. There's a special message from Joe on that video as well. So go and check that out at magneticmarymethod.com/win. All right, so let's see here. We got our name here, Jeremy. Check in with the chat. Vanessa says, my husband is a physician and he can't remember patients' names when he sees them out and about. It's tough. Thanks for sharing that, Vanessa. If he wants to get some memory training, watch the replay of this, or go into the Magnetic Memory Method training and get the course on memorizing names. There's a lot of exercises there, and you'll enjoy it a great deal. All right, so all that said, let's get started with memorizing names. So what is the basis of all this? In order to memorize names, what you're going to need to do, what you want to do, is you want to understand association. You want to understand association. So what is association? Association is linking one thing to another. Now, I think ideally, and certainly for me, you always want to have space as part of this, and you always will. So many memory trainers, they teach this without a memory palace, but they're using a memory palace anyway. So they will talk about making associations with the person's face. I don't do this myself because I don't want to be looking at magnetic imagery when I'm looking at a new person. So use different areas of space rather than their face, but you can certainly do that and try and see how it works for you. But I like to do different areas of people's faces. So we got an example here up on the screen. Can everybody see that? Let me know in the chat if that actually is showing up for you, as I hope that it is. And I didn't do a sound check, but make sure everybody can hear. If you can chat, that would be awesome. Let me know. And if you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world and what you're doing and what you're thinking. And I know that Hamad asked about participating in this contest. Absolutely. Even if you're in Pakistan, there's no place in the world that you can't. Although you do want to, look at all. This is a real contest, so you want to look at the terms and conditions, and that's at magneticmemorymethod.com/win. And of course, if you're interested in learning names, then you can participate in that anywhere in the world as well, especially in Pakistan. Okay, so Julie says yep, and Vanessa says definitely and yes, and John says yep. Good. Okay, so are there any questions about just association in general? Uh, what you're trying to do is make a correspondence between a new name and something you already know, or a tool that you have figured out in advance, ideally based on something that you already know, and then create an association. So on this image here, this is a drawing that I made. Uh, I think that I'm getting better as an artist, and soon I will be a very good artist. But for now, that this is quite a long time ago that I drew this. But I drew it not only to demonstrate kind of what was going on in my head, but also because drawing is such a great way of building association and playing with color and playing with different kinds of visualization and extending the act of visualization through the muscles of the body, right? Because so many of the neural networks are developed and strengthened by muscles. So even though I'd already memorized these things, taking an extra step and drawing them helps me remember this person's name even longer. I don't always do this, and it's not always necessary, but it's just something to think about if you're struggling with this. If your mind is, oh, I just can't somehow, do all this stuff, think about drawing it to get it. Think of it like training wheels for a little while in order to get it out of your head. And one of the things you'll notice in a lot of entrepreneurial trainings is the use of drawing or writing out in journals things. There's a reason why that they teach this. And it's because a lot of people get overwhelmed because they're trying to do things mentally that the mind or many minds just can't process. They don't have the mental rotation for it. They don't have the processing power for it. So they get it out of the brain. It's called brain dumping sometimes. Same thing in memory. Until that you get to where you can fly solo and hit what I like to call cruising altitude, both in memory and in business, you want to get things out on paper, and then even then continue to get them out on paper. Dan Sullivan, another person who's involved in Genius Network, he often talks about how that you need to sometimes get things out of your head to make space for new things. But I would say that you also need to get things out of your head to make space for the things in your head so they can move around better. So Jeremy here, I memorized his name, and I just heard the Pearl Jam song Jeremy, and I saw another friend of mine named Jeremy in a fist fight with the new Jeremy. With I didn't have the artistic ability to draw this, but he's kind of got the stereo, and he's just like Jeremy, bang bang bang, and it really really touches on a lot of levels of association. So it's not just a picture, right? Like I know what my friend Jeremy looks like. I know what the new Jeremy looks like because he's right in front of me. But I also know the sound of Jeremy from Pearl Jam, right? Which gives it another layer instantly of association, right? And I know what it feels like to hold a stereo in my arms, right? I know what it's like to dance, to be in a fight. And so now that's another layer of association. It's movement and physicality, right? Does that make sense to everybody? Let me know in the chat. Because if you're not touching those modes, magnetic modes, in your memory practice, you're missing out on layering out levels of association that will help you later. It takes a bit of practice to get into it to make sure you're touching all the magnetic modes, but this is a huge, huge principle. And then if you want to memorize it forever later, then you want to put it in a memory palace that has also received the benefit of all the magnetic modes. And then you want to use recall, rehearsal, and so forth if you want to memorize the names forever. But just in the fly, where you want to memorize the names, you want to feel as much as you can. Too many people get lost in, I can't see pictures in my head, or my visualization abilities are not strong enough, and so forth. I don't know any memory experts and memory competitors who rely only on vision alone, and usually they don't have time to see pictures in their head. And so you're thinking at a completely different level. And how you get that practice if you're not able to do it immediately is to do it on paper, right? So that's a huge tip for you. So Jeremy, that's just a simple example, right? and it's a very, very powerful one. Uh, D. Murphy is from California. Hello, D. Thanks for saying hello. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know in the chat where you are in the world. Vanessa says, I can only remember the Q. I forget the association target. That's not good. Let me know more about that, Vanessa. What kind of situations is this happening in? What do you mean by the word Q? And, often we judge these things. We say, oh, that's not good. But maybe there's more good in it than you realize, because when you have something happening, what's the good in it, and what can we preserve from it, and then what is the bad, and is it really all that bad, or does it just need to be tweaked? Does it just need to be shifted? Julie says, I like the fist fight with the other Jeremy. Yeah, I mean, fist fights are a pretty common one. Now, again, I don't use the person's face. This is happening elsewhere, and I just don't want that sort of thing happening. Just out of respect for that person, but I also it's just weird to me to do that. But things that are physical are very, very effective. I remember at this, I don't have the drawing ready for you, and I actually didn't make a drawing of this one in particular, but I have a couple other drawings to share with you. Um, but the guy next to him was Andre, and this is years ago, and I still remember this. Uh, uh, but it was Andre the Giant, right, just behind him. And one of the cool things that will happen is that every time you meet an Andre the Giant is ready to go, right? From previous use, previous decision making. Same thing with Jeremy. And sometimes people worry, yeah, but that won't be unique enough. What happens if I get it all mixed up? Well, the number one answer to that is, well, what happens if it does, right? Like, just experience it for yourself without worry, without fear, and then you can troubleshoot if you have troubles. And don't worry too many. Like, people get lost in solutions for problems they haven't had yet, and then that just creates more fear and anxiety about actually ever using it. You typically will not have these problems in the first place, but if you do, then you don't have a problem. You have the path to a solution, and it's just a little bit of troubleshooting from there. Rasmus is here. Hey, Rasmus, thanks for saying hello. Good to see you. Uh, really, really appreciate you saying hello. And if you're just joining us, always say hello in the chat. And if you haven't had an opportunity to bookmark that link, go to magneticmemory.com/win. Open it in the next chat. If you'd like to be in a room where you can practice memorizing names in some, very, very exciting names to memorize, then you'll want to enter that contest and hope that you'll be there. And I hope you're the winner, because that will be very, very exciting to be looking at your entry. And there's some contest rules to look at and so forth, but we're really, really excited to be doing this, and it's a great honor and privilege. So check that out, and Jonathan has a video there for you. Rasmus, thanks for that chat, but it seems to have disappeared. If you can put it back in, that'd be awesome. Oh, Deck was here. Yeah. I don't know if I have the. I haven't seen you for so long, but great that you're here. Hello, thumbs up, and really wonderful to see your name after so long. Wow, what a wonderful, beautiful surprise. So yeah, great supporter of the Magnetic Memory Method project, and if you are interested in this business contest, you'll definitely want to check out that that link there, magneticmemorymethod.com/win. All right, so Jeremy, that's one example. Did everybody find that example useful? I know Julie said that it's useful, but what are your thoughts about that? Does that make sense? Give me a hell yeah or a yes, or however that you express your excitement in the chat, so that I know that this is on target for you. Or if something isn't making sense, also let me know, so that we know that things are connecting. Associations are being made, because association is the core of learning. And I would really appreciate you taking a second to let me know that this is effective for you. I'm also curious. Oh, Decwa says, thank you. Awesome. Yeah, oh, it's so good to see you. Also, I'm very curious to know more. You don't have to let me know now, but I'm always very curious how exactly you watch these. Is it on mobile, or are you on your desktop? Do you have 1,000 other tabs open and you're listening passively, or is this something that you pay attention to? I'm always very, very curious about that, because I know how I watch live streams, and I really love live streams. I think they're fantastic, but always curious about what is working for you and how you learn, and what to do next and how to change things. So that would be great. Julie says having the new Jeremy interacting with the old Jeremy works well. Indeed, indeed. And just for a little passive memory exercise for you all, passive memory exercise is different than active memory exercise. But if you're interested, later today, just ask yourself, what were those names that Anthony was talking about earlier, and just see if they come back, right? Or you can do a dedicated active memory exercise and actively memorize them and say, what were those names that he was talking about earlier today? And that'll just give you some memory exercise, a very, very profound brain exercise as well. And I use the word profound not at all lightly, because it is very, very profound. And I really appreciate everybody who understands the profundity of taking action. Because if you want things to change in your life, then you do these exercises. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Action is how transformation takes place. And so I challenge you later today to ask what were those names, right? And if you don't know the Pearl Jam song that I referred to, and if you don't have a friend named Jeremy, just think right now, what could you do? That would be an active memory and brain exercise. Just the passive version is just to not do anything at all and just ask later, what were those names, right? And you might even say, what was that picture, right? Just passively, what was that picture? Both of them will give you brain exercise, but obviously one will give you a higher outcome than the other. One will be using memory techniques. The other will be just triggering your brain. So they're both profound exercises, actually, and you can do all kinds of wonderful, wonderful passive memory exercise, and I highly encourage you to do so. So let's check in here. Oh, Emerson's here. Good to see you. Namaste for saying hello, and thank you, thank you. Listening at work on your break. Awesome. Well, thank you for spending some time with us today. I really appreciate it, and always good to see you. Rasmus says, can this always be used for vocabulary? Each word, unless it is an abstract, has a picture associated with it. Does it work only if the names are the same, or also works if pictures are similar? Okay, great question, Rasmus. And great name, by the way. I like that screen name. Or if it's your real name, great real name. So one of the things to think about here is, what is vocabulary? Right? Vocabulary is names, right? Names that we have assigned to things or actions or objects or ideas, concepts to condition certain words. Every word is a name. Red is a name for the condition of being red. It might be the name of a person in some circumstances, but one wants to. I would highly recommend you not to get mixed up with what information is. Information, in terms of how the human brain processes things, is largely words or can be encoded in words. So try not to distinguish the names of people from the names of words if you can. Now you want to at some level, because you're now going to assign a new name, like Vanessa here today, right? And I don't want to mess myself up by thinking about Vanna White. So, if I felt that I was going to fear that, then I would add more conditions there. But I'm just, at some level, treating it just like any word under the sun. And the thing with names is that they don't necessarily have meaning, so we're giving them meaning. And when you're learning a foreign language, whether it's French, as Rasmus is doing, or whether it is German or Chinese or anything like this, a lot of people, they start to think that there's something special about that language. This is an especially difficult language, or this language is a little more abstract than another one. Well, no. If you don't know the meaning of it, then it's just as abstract as anything else, or just as lacking in concrete character as anything else, except for the most concrete character in the world, which is the sound of it and the meaning, if you know what the meaning is, right? And so just treat information as information. Don't give it any special powers over you. Don't make it more abstract than it is. Don't create any kind of fantasy illusion that is difficult, because that's just going to make it more difficult to you. Just say, this is information. It is bland, unextraordinary, beautiful information. And I mean bland and unextraordinary in ways that we're conditioning it to put it in its place, like that alpha puppy that I was talking about before, alpha memory, right? Alpha memory doesn't get blown over by differences between this and that word. All things are under its power. All things are subject to its majesty. It is the sovereign memory that just looks at things and deals with it, puts it in its place, right? So to speak. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take any word and we're going to look at its properties as such. Maybe we need to spend a little bit more attention on its letters, its spelling in this particular instance. Maybe it's got multiple meanings and we have to decide which one we're going to pick right now. Maybe it doesn't have any meaning at all because it's the name of a person, but you can give it meaning, like Jeremy, right? Well, Jeremy may, and certainly probably does. I've never looked at the word origin of Jeremy, but it probably has some origin. Anthony has an interesting origin, for example, and I've seen different versions of what it's supposed to mean and so forth, and it has multiple meanings. Well, we'll just pick one and give it some meaning. So, Jeremy, for example, has lots of meanings. I have a friend named Jeremy, right? And he's a wild cat. And we had lots of fun and we went on crazy adventures. We had to go to church together as kids. We were thrust upon us, dragged like convicts every Sunday and Wednesday. And then we went on trips to all over the place, sometimes trips that took days to get there and so on. So Jeremy has meaning for me. It's not really abstract. But the new Jeremy that I might meet, he doesn't have any meaning yet. But when I take the Jeremy that I know and I put them together, I wind them together in space, I turn on Jeremy from Pearl Jam, hear that, give them some movement and meaning. Now they have meaning. Same thing with French or German or whatever. Like it doesn't really matter. It's all equal in some sense, and it all has your complete control in the sense that you just take it word by word, phrase by phrase, and just work with it, massage it, magnetize it, right? And give it the meaning that you find sufficient to get it into memory through practice of these techniques. So I hope that makes sense, Rasmus, but it's just, it's the way that it works. And so I'm not sure what you mean by does it work if the names are the same or if the pictures are similar, but as I hope to express earlier, and I don't know if you caught it, it doesn't have to necessarily do with pictures. You don't have to see images in your mind necessarily. And a lot of people don't have time for it. And there's many, many other paths to feeling these things. And if you encounter difficulties or issues with similarity, always think about, is this really a problem? And what can I do to troubleshoot it? There is many, many guides on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast, on this channel, on in the masterclass, all over about the ugly sister effect, which is maybe what you're experiencing. It might not be what you're experiencing. It might be something related to it. Speaking of French, it might be bresquez-vous. I don't know. You may have a jamais-vu. There's all kinds of issues that you could be having, but it is just not a problem unless you make it a problem. It's the path to a solution. So similarities are cool. Now, there are some general principles around similarities that you want to keep in mind. So, for example, in the case where there's 5 Christians in a room, maybe some of them just go by Chris. Well, what do you do in that case? Well, one thing, for example, is they're not in the same position in the room, right? This is why memory palaces are so good for language learning, because even if there's similarities, they're not in the same position in a memory palace. You have the distinguishing factor of space, right? And remember, space is ultimate because it contains all things, as Thales said. Megason topos habantagar kori, which is a great, great, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful saying to commit to memory. It's a good memory exercise to do so. I love that phrase very much because it tells the truth about why the memory palace is so powerful. Space is ultimate because it contains all things. And I don't know for sure that Simonides of Kos, there's a name to memorize, I don't know for certain that he knew Thales, but it's very unlikely that he didn't, and he may, if the legends about him memorizing names in that banquet hall that crumbled to the ground. Does everybody know, by the way, the story of Simonides of Kos? It is a name-based story that's very, very powerful. Let me know in the chat if you're familiar with it already, and give me some hell yes if you'd like to hear it, because it's a great, great story. I tell my own version that may or may not be based on reality, because we don't know if it really happened or not. Batman may have been there, actually. John Boy 700. Oh, John Boy from the Waltons, right? Is that a picture of John Boy from the Waltons? Oh, wow. I'm watching on Roku. It's awesome. Okay, cool. I have to look up what Roku is. Thanks for mentioning it. Julie says, "Wow, I never thought of vocabulary as names. All words are names, all right? Every word is a name. And so no matter how abstract an idea is, if you can describe it in words, those words become either the name or the gathering of names, the collection of names that you use to describe that thing. You have a taxonomy of names. Every word in every sentence is a name. The is a name for something, right? Deco says, I know the story, but I'd love to hear your version. All right. Simonides of Kos. By the way, some people pronounce it Simonides, Simonides. There's lots of ways of doing it. But Simonides, I think, is good. And Kos, of course, is an island back in the day. But for those of you who are joining us and haven't said hello yet, please do hit thumbs up in the chat. And if you're interested in 10K and joining Jonathan Levy in a room where you'll memorize some of the best names in the business world, go to magneticmarymethod.com/win. And I don't know if Simonides of Kos will be there, but some people have said very kindly that they think I'm the current incarnation of him. I'm not sure that that's the case. I think Bruno is maybe a better parallel, although actually I'm just me. But well, if you wanted to make parallels, thank you kindly. But you'll want to go to magneticmarymethod.com/win and check out that contest because you have an opportunity to rub shoulders with some of the absolute finest entrepreneurs in the world and names well worth remembering. So let's see here. Simonides of Kos. So oh, Emerson here says, are there any other memory systems from other cultures other than Greece? I hear the same story all the time about Simonides, but what about India, China, Africa, etc.? Yeah, there's a great question, Emerson's. There's a post on magneticmarymethod.com, a two-parter with memory techniques from around the world, different traditions, and yes, there are. Read The Memory Code by Lynn Kelly, and you'll learn about many earlier traditions. You'll learn about the Lukasa, for example, and you'll learn about some of the rites of passage around memory that used to exist. Really, really fascinating stuff. There's an Indian tradition. There's even an Indian version of the major method that predates the major by a long time, very long time. The Chinese have a tradition, or many traditions actually, and one of the ways to access that is to read the Memory Palace of Matteo Ricci by Jonathan D. Spence. And by the way, I used memory techniques to remember the name Jonathan D. Spence, so that's something that's cool to do as well. Authors are also names, and titles of books are also names, so you can check that out, or you can check these skills out for that purpose of memorizing the names of books, right? Because titles are names, and it's a very good thing to be able to, instead of the title of the book, I'll send you the link later, right? That's not nearly as cool as just the Memory Palace of Matteo Ricci by Jonathan D. Spence, right? That's a lot better, and with authority and conviction. And it's well worth your time memorizing the titles of books, and you can add things like dates and so forth if you like, for added focus and clarity, memory, brain exercises, and just confidence in knowledge and being an intellectual person. And what ends up happening is, or intellectual, you don't have to be intellectual in any sense, but just a well-educated person. Although why not be intellectual? There's a very frightening anti-intellectual tone out there in the world these days that drives me bonkers a little bit, because we need our intellectuals, even if we are not going to be intellectual ourselves. We need people to theorize about the conditions so that we can see them from multiple perspectives. And we are always theorizing at some level anyway. We are all intellectuals at heart and by nature, because we need theory in order to craft our survival in the world. So I hope that gives you something to go on. If you need that link, you can always reach out and get in touch. Well, I mean, what the heck? I got all these whiz-bang tools. I'll pop it in the chat for you. How does that sound? Magnetic memory method, so everybody can follow it, bookmark it, and it's a two-parter, and there's from around the world. I'm not sure if this is going to come up exactly right quick, but yeah. So that search didn't work. magneticmemorymethod.com. I like that name. I'm just going to search the site properly. One of these days, I will have an assistant on these lives with me. If you saw Jonathan's live yesterday in his Super Learner Facebook group, Brandon did an amazing job. Thank you, Brandon, so much for helping us out with that. He's an incredible, incredible guy. So here's part 1 of memory techniques around the world. And here's part 2. And I think you'll find that there is a lot of powerful and wonderful resources from around the world to check out. So thanks for asking about that, Emerson's. It's really, really important. Those links are in the chat there for you, and I appreciate the question. So D. Murphy says, on my way to Greece soon. Interested in the story? Okay, thank you. Let's get into it. And Rasmus, I see your question here. We'll catch up with that after I tell the story of Simonides of Kos. All right, so, I tell it a little bit different than it's often told, and nobody was there that we know of. But basically, Simonides was invited to give a speech at a banquet, and there were a bunch of people, really important people at the banquet. And during his speech, he gave, apparently he was a poet, and he recited some poetry and so forth. But at some point, he thanked the gods, Castor and Pollux. And after his speech in this banquet, just imagine this giant banquet hall. Like these Greek buildings with these, I guess they're Ionic columns, and they're just really, really beautiful. If you've ever been to Athens, you would have seen dozens of these in ruin in different states of decay, and the Parthenon and so forth. They're just there on the island of Kos, and he's giving the speech, and he thanks Castor and Pollux for the opportunity to speak there. And then after, he goes to the manager of the banquet, and he says, all right, I've done my speech. Time to pay up for the speech. And the manager says, yeah, well, during your speech there, buddy, you thanked Castor and Pollux, and you didn't thank me. So why don't you go ask them to pay the bill? And so Simonides is like, really? And he's thinking about what he's going to do about this situation when a page comes, or a servant boy, or whoever it may have been, comes, and he says, sorry there, Mr. Simonides of Kos, but there's a couple of dudes outside who want to see you. And Simonides is like a little bit disgruntled. He's still trying to figure out how he's going to get paid for his wonderful speech, his oration of poetry. And he goes outside, pondering all the way how he's going to deal with the situation. And lo and behold, the two men outside are Castor and Pollux. But they're not right at the door. They're a little bit further away. And they're like, come on over here. Come over here. Just step away from the building. Step away from the building, a little bit further, a little bit to the left. Yeah, come. And then when Simonides reaches Castor and Pollux, they snap their fingers, and an earthquake destroys the entire banquet hall and crushes everybody inside to death, including the manager, who refused to pay the bill for Simonides' great speech. Now, typical Greek mythology, that's quite an over-exaggeration. Castor and Pollux may be the Hannibal Lecter of ancient Greece, but in any case, and you may know that reference there that I'm making. If you don't, then something you'll come across eventually if you ever get into that world of cinema and literature. But basically what ended up happening is Simonides was able to help the authorities identify the bodies of all the dead, because he knew exactly where they were in this banquet hall, and he had memorized their names. And so this pairing of space with the memory techniques that he used for the names, which were very similar to the memory techniques that he used to memorize the poems and the elements of the speech that he gave, he was able to help the families of the grieving properly bury the dead, which, if you know about ancient Greek culture, being able to properly bury the dead is a big deal. It's a big deal. And if you know your tragic theater history, you know just how big of a deal it is. It's like a huge deal. So, um, like, if you were to bury the dead body of a soldier who was not properly authorized for burial for because of whatever bad act that soldier may have done, you would be penalized with death as well, even if that burial was just putting 1 grain of sand on their body to cover the dead. So big deal, big deal. So anyway, that's the story of Simonides of Kos. But I think more important than the story is to understand what the story is telling us about the memory tradition, right? Because assuming I told it in an entertaining way, you'll probably remember things like I was like big building, right? And then giant earthquake, right? Well, part of the reason why this story survived is not because of the origin of memory techniques, but because it's big, it's dramatic, it involves violence, right? It's a memorable story. And it's telling us about what we need to do in our minds to remember anything, right? So you exaggerate things, you make them big, you make them violent, or full of action. Anyway, I know not everybody is into the violent thing, and that's a good thing, but you want to absolutely 100% make it dramatic, make it epic. This is the stuff of the gods going on in your head. And whether you see it, you hear it, you feel it, you taste it, you smell it, whatever, the more you can get that stuff in there, the more memorable it's going to become. So that's the story of Simonides of Kos. I think it's a really, really good one, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know in the chat if that satisfies your personal qualifications for a story well told. Tekla says arigato. Okay, cool. That's great. Rasmus had a question here. Oh, and Emerson says, thank you, teacher. Thank you, teacher Emerson. I learn as much from you all as I, if not more, than I'm able to give. And speaking of giving, we want to give you a seat. So if you haven't visited magneticmarymethod.com/win, make sure that you go there now and get it open so you can watch that video after this live stream. And I actually don't mind if you leave and go and check it out now, because there is a deadline on that contest. And so you might want to think about whether you are in a mindset and a mind and a goal set to do that, to join us on that contest. I hope that you will, because it's going to be fantastic. It's already so many people have joined, and we're really looking forward to working with those people as part of the contest ins and outs. And there are some ins and outs, so make sure you check and read everything and watch Jonathan's video for you there, all at magneticmarymethod.com. So let me answer Rasmus' questions here. And would you like a couple more examples of names with some drawings that I have for you? If so, let me know in the chat. Or if that's enough for you and you're done and you got it, you understand, then let me know. Or if you understand and you would just like some more, then also let me know. And I will rock and roll out a couple more drawings for you. But I'd love to know if this is helpful for you, if it's engaging, and if you are interested in that. Sandra is here from Brooklyn. I love Brooklyn. Sandra, I used to live in Dumbo. So Brooklyn is a place of many memory palaces for me. I actually lived in the clock tower for a short while. So I don't know how the clock tower is doing these days, but I see it in movies a lot, and I'm always like, yeah, I was there. What a wonderful time. What a wonderful time. What a wonderful place. I've often wondered what it's like these days. It's been a long time. Rasmus says, definitely helpful. All right, I'm going to get to your question there that you posted. Sandra says, cool. Yeah, Dumbo's cool. I got lots of memory palaces around there. I got lots of memory palaces all throughout Manhattan. I spent most of my time in Manhattan living up in Washington Heights, but at 187. But man, New York is a great haven of memory palaces. Anybody who is starved for memory palaces who lives in New York City really is somehow not paying attention. Just put it lightly. Decla says, joined in late, so another example would be good until I watch the replay. Excellent, you got it coming up. Let me just grab these chats here from Rasmus. So, there's another one here. D. Murphy says, watching on iPad, would like to hear the story. Okay, iPad, thanks for letting me know. I'm always interested. Rasmus says, for example, tree is associated with the picture, and I want to learn Swedish plus tree in Swedish is called trade. How to associate trade to that picture. All right, so good question, interesting. Why does tree or trade have to be associated with a picture? I'd love to know if you have an answer to that before we carry on. And the reason why I'm doing that instead of just like the instant idea that comes to my mind has a picture, okay, but it's not really based in pictures. So one of the things that I would encourage you to do is try thinking in ways other than pictures to reduce that need, right? Because already just looking at the sound, I don't know if that umlaut in Swedish works as it does in German, and that it would be trade. Let me know if that's the right pronunciation there in your understanding of tree. But the first thing that comes to mind is a concept, not a picture. It's a phonic concept. So that already is a huge clue that will help you. And it'll help with any name as well. And incidentally, trade, if that's how it's pronounced, is a sound that has many parallels. It has many parallels to concepts that are just so powerful, so powerful. Um, so Rasmus says definitely helpful. Sandra says cool. D. Murphy says, graduated from grad school a long time ago, want to return to school, got any study help? There's lots about study. Have you ever seen the podcast and blog post I put together on note taking? If not, I'll send you the link there. And for all of you, make yourself a little library of linky links for study later. I'd recommend it to anybody who is not familiar with the blog and not familiar with the podcast to make it your destination, because usually I find that people aren't aware of just how much material there is there for them. Of course, to unlock the full meaning of it, you want to be in the masterclass, but you'll find lots of tips there. But knowing more about how to take notes will definitely help. I've thought of going back to school myself recently, actually. Long story. Maybe it's a story I'll tell by request only. We're playing requests tonight. But I cooked up an idea for me to go back to school, and I'm not sure yet if I'm going to do it, but it would be a memory demonstration extraordinaire, to be sure. All right, so yeah, Rasmus, waiting back to hear from you on the tree issue, but I think I've given some clues to those who know memory techniques already, and I would jam on that topic further if you wanted to tell me the answer to that question. All right, so this was the example for Jeremy. Let's take another example here that maybe you will resonate with. So can anybody, just looking at this, does anybody get just a general impression about what this image is all about? Let me know in the chat if it raises any ideas to mind. And I know I'm not a great artist by any stretch of the imagination, but I think, to be fair, there's probably, maybe something there that someone at least of my generation would pick up on as being oh, alien. Good guess. Now that you now that you say alien, that does sort of look like Sigourney Weaver there with that implement. So maybe I'm not as bad of an artist as I thought. I just am not good, not as good as nailing what I'm looking for. But but what's supposed to be a hood on a cloak looks like Sigourney Weaver's hair. No, it's not alien, and don't be sorry. Nothing to be apologetic for. Really good guess, actually. Really good guess. So this is supposed to be Luke Skywalker carving an S onto, or sorry, it's supposed to be Sigourney Weaver. That's right. It's supposed to be Sigourney Weaver carving an S on Luke with a lightsaber. So this is this was an image for a guy named Lucas, and I in my entire world life, I'd never had to memorize the name of a guy named Lucas before, so I was kind of struggling with figuring it out. So I just made him his own twin and had him carve an S into his own chest. Now, why do this? Because Luke Skywalker is not Lucas, right? But Luke Skywalker is Luke, initial S, and to really compound that Lucas, then what I saw was this S. Now, in retrospect, I could have seen an ass, like the donkey, or some other thing that corresponds to that word, but or that name for an animal, but or body part. But that's what I saw at the time, and it worked just fine. It worked just fine. So that's an example. And then I went and drew it later, and I think you'll find that if you are willing to let go of one-to-one correspondences and work with what comes to mind and then develop over time stock characters, the next time you meet a Lucas, you've already got it, right? You've already got what you've decided, or you improve it. Or when you've got what you've established, you think about how you can improve it, right? And now it's instantly improvable because I have a person in my network whose name is Lucas, right? And so there you go. It's just that simple. So Rasmus says, the reason I want to associate with picture is that when I hear the word tree, the first thing that comes to mind is a green leafy thing, picture of a tree. Okay, fair enough. But if I was learning Swedish, I thought you were learning French, but if I was learning Swedish, and if trade is a decent pronunciation of that, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to imagine something more like Trey Parker trading trees with who else? I know another Trey personally. So I would, or maybe the trees are in an ice tray, uh, and so on. So I'm going to try to combine all kinds of things. Now the cool thing about the trees being in an ice tray, going from Trey Parker to my other friend Trey, is that then you can think about it being cold because of the ice tray, right? And maybe the ice tray has cracks in it and the trees are falling out. Now you can think of that as a picture, but it's magnetic imagery. It's magnetic imagery because it goes far beyond just a picture. And it doesn't treat the tree as a picture. It treats the tree as a thing that is located growing in an ice tray, right? And now it has force, it has being, it has duration, because I'm thinking of growth in a place that is in trade. It's in transit. It's being traded and so forth, and go from there. And it's just pushing and pushing and pushing. This is kind of like what the magnetic memory method is doing, is helping you move from just memory techniques to the combination of ars memorativa, which is the art of memory, and ars combinatoria, which is the art of combination. And when you put those two things together, plus space being that thing which contains all things, and you really massage this into an area where you're going to be able to revisit it countless times, or you don't have to revisit it countless times to get it into long-term memory, but a sufficient number of times so that you can use that word countlessly, then away you go. Away you go. It's just done. And so I really encourage to not think about pictures alone. It's just a part of it. It's just a part of it. John Boy says, in high school, I decided I had no natural ability to memorize and struggled through French. I'm now quite fluent in Spanish and have moved on to Hebrew and Aramaic. Wonderful, wonderful. That's cool. And you say, I could not have done it without your videos and mind palaces. John Boy, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I really appreciate it. That's a wonderful outcome for you. And I'm sorry you had to struggle in high school. But it shows the power of decision making and investing in education. So really appreciate that you've spent time with the videos that I create, and I'm just overwhelmed and astonished that that this has helped you, especially with Spanish and moving on to Hebrew and Aramaic, which are such special languages. Incredible. I've spent a bit of time with ancient or biblical Hebrew, so that's great. Really wonderful, wonderful. So thank you for that. And, I'd really love to hear from you in an email and learn more about that. That'd be fantastic. Christian's here. Hello, Christian. Good to see you. Thanks for saying hello. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how your name memory is. And let me know, do you have a business? Are you an entrepreneur? Or do you want to have a business? What's your dream business? If you were going to have a business, would you make cups with the Batman logo on them? Or what would you do? Let me know. Yeah, I'd love to hear from you if you are a business owner or you want to have a business at some point in the future. Let me know in the chat so that I can learn more about you on that level, entrepreneur to entrepreneur. Decwa says, agree, Anthony, you're the best at keeping hope alive and moving us forward. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate the kind words. It's just a great honor to be able to do this work, to be able to meet with people and to inspire people. You know, the memory techniques are just something that ultimately always come down to self-study, self-practice, self-application. The reason why is because it's always in your mind. It's only in your mind. You're the only one who's at the controls of your mind. But that doesn't mean there isn't a space for further education, for inspiration. And so I I feel that is the work. I've created the training, and the training is there for any person who would like to benefit from it. And the rest is just educating you about how to take action with the training. And you know, one of the odd things is we can sit here and talk all day, but if you haven't taken the training, so much of this is just like over one's head. It can be very, very difficult. And you know, magnetic memory method has as this philosophy to be the university of memory training, of memory improvement for large learning topics, for university topics, for language learning, for creating knowledge that you get to a point of expertise, get to a point of confidence and conviction in, that you're able to go out and change the world so that you are a ground moving individual, the best possible person that you can be. So I really appreciate hearing from you all and knowing that this helps you. Because it's just a rule in business. I was very fortunate never to be discouraged by sometimes, you know, there's a feast or famine in feedback as there is feast and famine in other areas. And I once heard something very, very wise from a guy named Dan Kennedy who said that the vast majority of your audience, the people you help, will never let you know. And that was a great thing. That was a great piece of wisdom to know, because I know a lot of people out there that get discouraged because they don't get encouragement, they don't get feedback, and so forth. And you need to know that you will not always hear back from people, and you need to keep going anyway, because just as a general rule in the universe, most people will never let you know. And you know, now I hear all the time, but it wasn't that way always. And you know, it's just, you don't do it for the ego strokes. You don't do it for the thank yous. You do it for causing change and transformation and inspiring people and making it so that they can do things like John Boy, get fluent in Spanish, move on to Hebrew, move on to Aramaic, conquer those goals. That's what you do it for. And you need to let go of the outcome ultimately, because it is self-study at the end of the day, and you need to be willing to do it even if you never hear about those outcome stories. And if the business that you create or the training that you create or whatever it is, if it's premised on the truth and you don't, you know, like memory training is premised on the truth, I don't really actually need to hear back from people, because I know that if you just take action with these techniques, they will work. So I think that if you are going to start a business in your life, you need to understand that is that what you do has to be premised on a truth so profound that you will do it even if no one ever tells you that it helped them. Now, that will be impossible, because if you're creating real help, someone will tell you, but you'll probably never hear back from the vast majority of them, and that needs to be just okay with you. And so, like I said, I heard that advice a long time ago, and it did help me to just, you know, not worry about whether or not you're getting this or that feedback. You should be worried if you don't get any, I guess. But at the end of the day, you've got to do it for the higher principles of the truth of the value that you create for the world, and understand that no matter how much you create, you'd never hear back from the vast majority of people. And that would be true even if you were an entertainer. Like, you could never, if you were Michael Jackson, you could never possibly meet all of your fans, nor could you meet all of your haters. You know, it would just be impossible mathematically. You wouldn't have enough time. So it's just an interesting principle and one thing to keep in mind. So I would love to always know who amongst you are entrepreneurs, because I know people struggle with these things, and it's it's a very interesting issue that, you know, it crosses with memory techniques and memory training, is that often you will not perceive when you're growing, but if you'll just keep practicing, you will grow and you will get the results. It's really, really powerful. You have to be able to let go of the outcome sometimes. You have to let go of the need for feedback sometimes. You have to let go of the need for encouragement sometimes. You just need to keep going and showing up again and again and again. And then the skills that you want will pop. So I hope that helps you. And I hope that if you are really, really in a position where you want to start a business or you want your current business to grow, you will join our contest at magneticmarymethod.com/win. And there's a $10,000 ticket up for grabs for one lucky person to join Jonathan Levy at the next Genius Network meeting. It's going to be fantastic, and I hope that you will be the winner. All right, so let's check in with the chat here. So Rasmus says, I had given up on memory till I found your course and later your YouTube channel. I used to think I got no memory. Well, that's great, Rasmus. Thanks for letting us know, and really appreciate your questions. They are great questions, and you don't have to give up on your memory at all. Your memory is perfect. It's just a matter of understanding it better and using it at a higher possible level. And I believe this is true for each person, for each skill. Each skill that you want to develop, you're already in the perfect position. Michael Hyatt said, you know, every single person has more resources than they'll ever need to do whatever it is that they want. They just got to be really, really open to seeing it and then working with what's there, what's available right now. And the beauty with memory is that memory is always 100% on tap and available, right? So this is the miracle of memory. Anybody can get involved. And if you want to start a business, all the resources you could ever possibly need are available to you right now. You just need to be open to them, and you need to be working. And yes, there's work involved, but you can accomplish your dreams. You can be living your dream situation, your dream life, as I am now. This is my dream. It's happening right here, right now, and you're all here. That's amazing. So it's possible, and you have more resources than you could ever possibly need. So keep that as a mindset principle. And I don't know what the situation will be for you in terms of the resources you have, unless we get together and talk and chat and so forth and figure out what it is that you can do in your situation. And that's, possible. But you have to be open to it. You have to be open to trying things. And a lot of the things that you need to try in all areas of life, they might seem counterintuitive to you, and you might be like, yeah, but I don't get it, I don't understand it, and so forth, which is perfectly normal. But you got to try it anyway, because sometimes the thing that we need to do the most is suppress the need to understand the why of things and just do it anyway, and you will figure out the why as you go along. And there's a lot of people who are held back because their learning preference involves being a why learner. They really, really need whys. But the problem is that there aren't always whys. And so you got to sometimes push through. And, each of us is a why learner in some areas of our lives. But it just sounds really weird and counterintuitive. But sometimes suppressing the need to know why is the thing that you need to do. And well, it just comes to mind, Tim Ferriss said, the task is the obstacle standing between you and the task. So often what is standing between us and the outcome and the results that we're looking for is actually just our minds and our perspectives, and we need to just do a shift. And that can be challenging, but you have more resources than you could ever possibly need right now. I believe that 100%. I know there's evidence of it everywhere. If you're attending this live right now, you have all the technology in the world to change the world if you so choose, or change your life, improve your position, improve your memory, improve whatever it is you want to do. You have all of that opportunity, and it's amazing what you can do for yourself. So let's check in with the chat. John Boy says, I'll be glad to do it. Awesome, John Boy. I look forward to your email, and I want to hear more about your story. That just is amazing, and again, deeply honored to have been a part of that. And thank you for taking action with these techniques, because that's where it all happens. So Sandra says, is there a memory tip for learning muscle attachments that you can suggest? Well, I'm not sure what kind of memory tip that you're looking for. Have you taken the free course at magneticmarymethod.com/YT? The tips that I can give are usually best directed at where you're at in the journey, because the tip is to take memory training first and foremost. And today we have discovered that all words can be memorized, and all names are words, so all names can be memorized. And so all attachments in muscles and car parts or airplane parts or whatever can have names that can be memorized. The question is, can you actually create imagery that you can revisit properly? Which is why my emphasis on the memory palace is never going to fade, never going to change, because number one struggle that people have with these memory techniques is the matter of scale. And so, yeah, you can like memorize, you can create these images in the void, but how do you scale it, right? And how do you revisit them in a way that actually lets you get them into long-term memory correctly? You do that with a proper memory palace network. And ideally, it's a magnetic memory palace network that follows all of the rules and conditions that make memory palaces work properly. And each person is going to have some kind of thing that they need to suit to themselves. But if you don't know the rules and conditions and principles, you'll never put the suit on. So there's a bit of tailoring. It's like there's always a bit of tailoring. In the same way, like a lot of people don't understand this about martial arts, but martial arts, the kata and all this sort of stuff, when you go up the belts and the ranks and all this jazz, you're not getting there because that you are perfectly executing every single move. You're getting there because your sensei or your teacher recognizes that you've made it your own and suited it to your body. You've tailored it to your body, and you have demonstrated mastery over that skill in the situations in which that skill is needed. But it's not as if you've somehow mastered what somebody else did. No, you've assumed it for yourself. You've made it your own. And it's the same thing with the magnetic memory method, and that's why we don't use the word system, and we avoid the word system, even though there is a systematicity to what's going on here. We're helping you create your own systems. So if you haven't taken that free course, the tip is to take that free course and to complete it thoroughly. And then if you need more help, then get the masterclass and continue to study. And that will unlock so many tips. There's a massive FAQ section there for every application under the sun. But the number one tip is to really understand spatial memory and to really exercise it, really make it your own special talent, because that's going to be the game changer, because you can't scale this technique without it. You simply cannot, or it's very unlikely. I would not put a dogmatic rule that nobody can, but I've never heard of anybody who's done any large scale memory based learning project, or better said, memory technique based learning project, that hasn't had a memory palace strategy involved. It's just not possible. Very, very unlikely. Anyway, and then the problem is that all memory techniques are spatial in the first place. So there's no getting around the fact that space is going to be used. It's just the way that it is. And all things are contained in the space of your brain, the chemical space in your brain. So if you want to read the science behind this and why I can be so certain that this is 100% true and there's no wiggle room for anybody around this, then read The Case for Mental Imagery by Stephen Kosslyn, and you'll find, oh, wait a second, this memory technique has lasted for thousands of years, the memory palace, because that's what the brain needs to learn anyway. And there's a one-to-one correspondence. Well, one-to-one is a bit much, but there's something like a one-to-one correspondence between information in the world and space in the world, and how the brain encodes that into the chemicals, and how those chemicals then change space in the brain over time through the neural networks. That's a lot of heavy science, I know, but it's the science that will set you free. And you don't actually have to study the science in order to get the benefits of the techniques. You just need to study the techniques. But I think that there's a special advantage for those who go further into the science, because the science unlocks ideas about how to improve your practice. Or you can study how I've helped you understand how to improve your practice based on the science by giving you exercises and the like in the masterclass. So I hope that helps you, and I hope you will go out and check it out. So you say, yes, okay, I'll check it out. Great. Please do. And I highly encourage everybody who is sitting on the fence about taking that experience to just give it a try. There's nothing to lose, absolutely nothing to lose whatsoever. The only thing that there is to lose the ignorance about what your memory really is. and what a superpower you are sitting on that you probably are not even beginning to experience for the miraculous thing that it is. And it is a force that you can unlock with, like we got the Star Wars thing going on here with Luke and the lightsaber and so forth. There is a real force, and that it is your memory. If you can unlock its power and get comfortable and confident with it, you can accomplish so much that it's even better than the force from Star Wars. It is a force unto itself. It is the force that binds all forces. So it's really, really powerful and cool. All right, so Rasmus says, my dream job is working as a psychologist. I study it now. Awesome. I wanted to be a psychologist too for a long time. And unfortunately, I let my lack of courage at the time and my fear about learning math get in the way. It was kind of stupid, but that was what happened at the time. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to learn the math and do the math to be able to, give prescriptions and so forth. Really sad. But I did keep up with my interest in psychology, and I studied a lot, and I did psychoanalysis myself. I underwent psychoanalysis, and that was a fascinating experience. So I managed to have some great experiences with psychology one way or the other. But it's one of the I don't really have regrets in life, but it's one of those things where I just thought, why didn't I know memory techniques earlier? I wouldn't have had that fear or worry or concern for a second. I would have just dove in and figured it out. But so the chips fell. You're here now through the luck of the internet and all that stuff to never have that if you're in a position of doubt and concern and worry. And so I highly recommend that you just dive into memory techniques because there's absolutely nothing that you can't achieve. Deco says yes, but we may have missed you. Yeah, well, thank you. Um, in many ways, I would say that I still am able to experience a career in psychology, just from a different angle. In the same way that a lot of this work that I do allows me to explore philosophy in a way that just couldn't possibly be as powerful otherwise. So that's cool. So yeah, all things are good, and I appreciate that note very much. So who would like to see a third image? Is this all clear to everybody? Would you let me know in the chat if this is making sense in terms of memorizing, well, really anything better, because all things are names for things, right? I can't think of anything that isn't any word that isn't a name for something or some concept, but maybe there's a challenge to be made there. Let me know in the chat if you can think of something. Rasmus says, well, thanks to your method, I've found the courage. I mentioned Swedish because I want to continue my psychology studies in Sweden, and the whole studies will be taught in Swedish. All right, well, I love Sweden. Sweden's a beautiful, beautiful country, and congratulations on, uh, wanting to do this. It's a wonderful, wonderful calling, and I don't know what you intend to do with your psychological studies, or maybe the idea of what you will do is still yet to come. But we really, really need people who are well educated, not just half educated, but well educated, right? And if you can memorize, what was it, trade, TRA umlaut D for tree, then you can memorize anything in Swedish. I memorized it, so why not? And I don't really know that much about Swedish psychology history, or no Swedish psychologists come to mind, but they have a great, great, great art history. They have great theater history and literature history, and some of the the series that they put out these days shows a great depth of psychology going on there. Uh, so yeah, you're gonna have a great time there, and so go and get it, do it if that's what you want. Don't let a language be the barrier. When I went to Germany, if I had let German be the barrier, then it would have been a miserable time. But by the time that I was done the first semester, I was giving talks in German. So you can do it. It's not that difficult. It's only difficult if you make it difficult. And being in the country where you're learning the language is really, really great. It's not necessary, and in some cases it can be a distraction if you're going there as a tourist. But if you can live there for an extended period, it's going to help. Just dive in and enjoy. And just remember, it's all names. It's all names. All right, so Rasmus is the person who wants to see the third picture. All right, so we had Jeremy, we have Lucas. Let's move on to Lars. There we go. So there you go. There's Lars. So if anybody can guess what's going on here, I think it's pretty self-evident. Let me know in the chat. Rasmus says, my interest for psychology comes from the fact that I had suffered from depression a lot in the past. I don't want anybody else to suffer it from like I did. This is my calling. That's great to hear. I don't, I had depression really, really bad also. And it's great to, this is one of the, this is the history of the hero. This is the story of the hero's journey. You go through the fire, and you figure out the solution to get out of it, and then you go back to the fire and you rescue those others who are suffering. It's Plato's Cave, right? I don't know if you read Plato's Cave, but that's what that story is all about. The man who sees the light. After escaping from the cave, his only thing to do is not sit there and bask in the light of the truth, but to go back into the cave and rescue the others who are still enslaved and give them access to the truth. And to do so in a way, as Nietzsche would put it, that he would be cheerfully cursed and doomed with having to repeat that action of freeing the slaves again and again and again. That's the myth of the eternal return from Nietzsche. So you should check that out if you haven't read it before. Great, great, great. So, yeah, I mean, this is pretty self-evident. You meet a guy named Lars, you know that the drummer from Metallica is named Lars, and now all of a sudden the new Lars is a drum set for the Lars from Metallica, right? And away you go. One thing about this event is that the guy beside Lars was named Pascal, and Pascal is a bit of a challenging one, or at least it was at the time, and that's because I didn't think of Pascal the philosopher. I thought of Pascal the philosopher. I thought about his wager, but instead of, I didn't have a picture of him in mind. I never met another person named Pascal. I didn't have any. It was just really fast, and I basically made the mistake of thinking about God from Pascal's wager. And I got his name back, ultimately. I didn't make a mistake, but it was the one name that I struggled with at that event, and I finally got it back. And it was a bit of a pain. But the reason why it was a pain is because I went for an abstraction, which is God, and, it was fast. And I just was thinking of God for some reason. And then I had a hard time tracking back from God to Pascal. But it happens from time to time. And now I know better. I went and I looked up, read lots about Pascal, and thought of God more specifically in terms of the Sistine Chapel and so forth. So now this is the kind of paradox. I say don't think in pictures, but then sometimes you also, if you can relate, you don't have to see the picture in your mind, but if you can relate to a picture that you have seen in your mind, then it becomes more concrete. Like I'm speaking right now, and I'm not seeing Sistine Chapel in my mind, right? I'm not seeing Michelangelo's God touching Adam's finger in my mind. But because it is a thing that my brain has seen, it exists at a deeper level in the neural networks, and so it's more accessible than just, okay, Pascal, okay, God, I'll just see God. Like, there's nothing there to see. There's the example I was looking for. Remember, I said give a challenge. A challenge is if you can think of a word that points to nothing. Well, there it is. So we found one. Great. But then, of course, by virtue of it pointing to nothing, what is the nothing that it points to? There's a philosophical puzzle for you. Maybe it's Ishvara. But in any case, that was a little foible that I made. I managed to get back to Pascal nonetheless because the connection was stable enough, but I struggled with it. I was sweating. I almost thought I was going to blow it, but I didn't. And, that's another little tip for you when it comes to memorizing names. And this is a tip not from me. It is Ben Pridmore said this in an interview to Ron White. He said, you like Ron White is asking him, "What's your number one tip? What's your number one tip?" And he said, "Just trust your memory. Trust your memory." So these are from the memory champs, and it's true. At that moment, I wasn't sure, and I just trusted my memory, and bang presto, there it was. So it's a good tip, and you'll be able to trust your memory a lot better if you're relaxed, calm, cool, focused, letting it go. Let go of the outcome. Let go of the outcome. It's really, really important that you let go of the outcome, because at the end of the day, you're just a person who works on improving your memory, and that's a beautiful thing, right? There's no memory police that are going to come and drag you away to the memory prison if you make a mistake. Or, well, there may be psychological memory police that you beat yourself up for, but you just got to say to those memory police, "Hey, look, what happened there?" And then you will rectify yourself by just simply asking, "What happened there? What can I do better the next time?" And then you will be free. You will be free from the ignorance of forgetting, because you will not have forgetting as part of your life. You will only have the opportunity to troubleshoot and to improve. Isn't that a beautiful thing? I think it is. Thumbs up to that if you haven't hit that thumbs up already. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, make sure you're subscribed to this channel, and make sure you visit magneticmarymethod.com. But right now, go to magneticmarymethod.com/win. And I want to introduce you, if you're not aware of it already, to this contest that we're doing. And it is a beautiful thing. Jonathan Levy made a video for you all, and he held a live on the Super Learner page. Uh, he really, really had a great talk. I'm sure you can go watch the replay about this contest and how to learn from other people. He gave some powerful examples. If you're an entrepreneur, then you're going to definitely want to check out that replay. And you can go to magneticmarymethod.com/win, because this video is a shorter version of that. But if you want to learn about the Super Learner community, then you definitely want to be part of that as well. But this is an opportunity to win a seat with Jonathan and memorize names of very, very, very successful entrepreneurs, and hang out with Jonathan himself. Be mentored by him. Ask him questions about memory, if you like, and about developing your business or the business that you want to start. And that's at magneticmarymethod.com/win. And Sandra says, "Beautiful thing." Thank you for agreeing. I think that I know the beautiful thing that you're referring to, and this is a beautiful video as well. My favorite video that I've seen in a long time. And it just says there, "Do you dream of starting your own business on the internet to achieve financial freedom, empower tens of thousands of people, and one day find yourself in the company of other great entrepreneurs and thought leaders like Ray Kurzweil, Peter Diamandis, Joe Polish, Dean Graziosi, Russell Brunson, and more? Well, what if that day was today?" So you can win a $10,000 ticket to hang out with the world's top entrepreneurs. And so that's at magneticmarymethod.com/win. And I'm going to put that in the chat for you so you can just click directly. And I will, oh, that's the wrong one. I'll just give you the straight up link there. We shared some of the Magnetic Memory Method posts for you, and now there you go. That's just a straight up link there. And if you want the win one, https www.magneticmemorymethod.com/win. Yep, there you go. So I hope that you'll check that out. So to review, it's really, really simple to memorize names. You've got just some principles to keep in mind. If you are joining us now and you missed the beginning, you can go back and watch the replay. If you have any questions about this contest or the techniques that we've taught about today, let me know in the chat, and I'll be around for another couple of minutes here. If you want to ask anything, maybe I'll check out my inbox, see what's going on, do a bit of mailbag. How did that sound? Got so much email, and I love hearing from people. It's the one, Jonathan was talking on his chat about how he doesn't do email anymore, and by all rights, I probably shouldn't do email either, but I really just love interacting with people so much. It's one of my dream things. When I was a kid, I remember reading Ray Bradbury say that he spent X amount of hours on just answering his email his mail, and he just spent, I think, 2 hours a day just answering his email and so forth, and he loved it. That was his dream, and that implanted a seed in my mind when I was a young person. Incidentally, that was the same bookshelf where I first encountered Tony Buzan in the library. And it also installed the good values of writing at least 2,000 words a day. So a lot of people think that Stephen King is the first person in On Writing who talks about 2,000 words a day, but actually this is in a Ray Bradbury book, the same book where he talks about answering his emails all the time. So I'm always looking for interesting ways to to answer emails in more streamlined ways. But I love corresponding with people. I think it's really important, and to read the the issues that people present and think of creative ways to solve them and make sure that all the training reflects what those things are, and to be the best possible teacher that I can be. And I really want to thank Jonathan Levy actually for his inspiration for many years now in being the best possible entrepreneur that I can be. And so we're hosting this contest together now, and it's a great honor and privilege to do so. And if you're interested in being one of those winners, go to magneticmemorymethod.com. Sandra says, do you do this when you first meet the person? What does this uh, refer to, please, Sandra? One of the things with with language that I was taught by a great professor was never leave an article hanging. So um, when you when you're using word this, always refer to the thing that you're talking to, especially on a live stream where details may the lag and so many details are going. Not sure what the this is that you're referring to. Rasmus says, thanks, Anthony. Thank you, Rasmus. Great participation today. I really appreciate it. In email, here's something from Solomon, and he is saying, how long would it take a determined student to master the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass by applying the instructions? And are these lectures on CDs or online access? Great question, Solomon. So, in terms of how long it would take, here's the most reasonable way to answer this. It's up to you, and some examples are the Amanda Markham. She did 200 words in 10 days in a language she was studying called Arunta, and it was a very interesting story. She's written it up actually, and it's one of the most amazing things that I've ever read, even though it's totally predictable. Eldon Clem, he did 1,000 words in 6 weeks, and Kevin Richardson, I'm not sure what his total kanji is these days, but he built up to memorizing 30 of them. And Kevin's a really interesting case. If you haven't heard that interview, please check it out because he was on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. And those are language learning people. Then Jesse Villalobos, he just went through the course as quickly as possible. In a couple days, he's already at his job and improving. And I don't know the exact timeline, but very shortly thereafter, he wound up with a raise, and he also got a promotion, so a better position and more money for it. So those are all very quick stories of success. And then, of course, you can't really put a time value on the fun that one is having, because then every minute is like a beautiful eternity of bliss because learning becomes a different proposition. But it really is up to the student. Now, practically, if you watch the videos in 2 times speed, then obviously that cuts everything in half. I don't really recommend that, to tell you the truth, but you can. And so the core training, basically the average is that 2 to 5 hours of study of the core training. And then you have all of the satellite courses, and it's self-study, choose your own adventure. So what you do is you go into the masterclass, you take the master plan, and you finish that, and then you say, well, I want to focus on learning a language, so you go to the vocabulary course, or you want to improve your mother tongue, you go to the vocabulary course. There's a study guide there that will narrow down your choices in the choose your own adventure that you take after that, and there's plenty to explore in terms of these supplementary courses that take you through everything that you would need to know. In terms of it being CDs or online access, everything's online. There is a physical book called The Memory Connection that I have taken off the market at the moment, and there's a long story why that I'll spare you from, but it was an entrepreneurial decision. There are some copies left of this, which I may release soon, but in terms of the actual masterclass, there's no CDs or DVDs or anything like that. It's just study online 24/7 from any device in the world, and we have students from 197 countries. So thank you for that, Solomon. Oh, I just got an email. Maybe it's 198. um, XMC Hughes is happy to be here. Oh, happy to have you here. I really appreciate you saying hello and thanks for joining us. Let me know how you're doing in the chat while you're here, and let me know if you have any questions about names or this current contest that we're holding at magneticmarrymethod.com/win if you'd like a chance to meet Joe Polish and be with Jonathan Levy at the next Genius Network meeting for entrepreneurs and business people or people who just want to start a business and start it well with mentorship from Jonathan Levy and myself and Joe Polish at this event. Let's see, we got some chats and questions coming on here. So Sandra expands, do you make the visual connection to the name when you meet the new person? Doesn't that convey a distraction to the other person? Yeah, that's a good question. Well, yeah, it's instant. It's instant. And I've never had it convey a distraction. Uh, and I don't see why that it would, unless that you are in a practice. But the thing is you just practice in private first, of course, right? The course that I have in the masterclass takes you through all of the practice options. So this low stress, how that you actually build up the courage and confidence to go out and actually do it in an entire room. And there's a lot of ins and outs to what you can do to make sure that nobody ever senses that you're doing this. And there's a lot of ways to just do it privately. Like you don't have to actually put yourself under the stress of getting it right until that you're ready to do that. But yeah, when I do it instantly, and it's a lot of fun to just meet a person and memorize their name and do this creation of connection with them, and nobody notices. Nobody's the wiser. And the thing is, like I do this a lot in Brisbane when I go to these business meetings and so forth, and the last time I'm going to give a talk here in Brisbane next week as well. But the last time I did it, I was actually holding the meeting, and everybody went around and they introduced themselves. Oh no, that's not how it worked. Memory blip there. I somehow heard their names at some point while they were introducing themselves in a first round, and then I I spoke to them each individually by name and asked them a second question, and I addressed them by name. And then I was asking them what their superpower in business was, and they were saying their superpower in business. And then when it came to be my turn, I said, "Did you all observe how I addressed you each by name when I asked you about your superpower?" And they were like, "Yes, of course we did." And I said, "Well, my superpower is, robbing you of your ability to introduce yourself by name because I already know it." And and so I said something along these lines, and it was a very interesting thing because then I always ask people, "Is anybody else here can do that?" And they didn't. Now, the express purpose of that meeting was not to teach memory techniques. It was an entrepreneur meeting. But nonetheless, it's a great way of showing what it is that you can do. But it takes a bit of time to work up to doing that, especially if you are lacking courage and confidence in doing it. Uh, but I think that if you just have these techniques, I'm confident that you'll already have tons of courage and confidence for doing it. And I don't think I can't I can't think of a time that I've done it where I was worried about it or had any lack of courage. The only thing that happens to me sometimes, because I'm about 80% deaf in this ear, is that I'll hear something wrong or I won't hear the full name. So there was a meeting not that long ago where there was a guy named Darren, but I only heard Dara. So I just straight up said, "Look, I think it's Dara or something along that direction, but I didn't quite hear it." Still, everybody is super impressed, and it's not about impressing them. It's about demonstrating a skill that anybody can learn. And yes, I do it, to answer your question, right when I meet them instantly. And it's just that easy, and it's that fun, and nobody is the wiser. So I often pull a surprise, and I'm often at these business training meetings and so forth. And I remember one in Berlin, Master of Marketing, it was called, or Masters of Marketing, and they had the He-Man sign there and everything. And it was the first time I've ever done this where I didn't even see the faces of the people. Everybody went and introduced themselves, and I was standing in the back, and I memorized all their names without seeing their faces. It was just the position they were in the room. And it was really wild to then go up when I was introduced, stand on the stage, see them from the opposite direction, and then I said, I remember framing it in a nice way. I just said, well, one of the things I do in my business is I teach memory skills, and one of those skills is the names of people. And I said, would you be impressed if I recalled 70% of your names? I'm really tired, and I was standing at the back of the room. I didn't see your faces, so I'm going to gauge it at about 70%. And everybody was like, yeah, we'd be pretty impressed with that. And so I nailed every single one. And it's just even without having seen their faces. So it's just amazing and fun, these techniques. And if you nail it, you'll be able to do stuff like that. But I would say that you just got to pick your time when you're gonna do the demonstration. And on that particular occasion, there was one name that was a little bit. The person's name was spoken with an accent, and it was a little bit difficult for me to hear it. And so I had one of those situations where it was a sort of close association, and I just said I didn't quite catch it, but it sounded something like. And it turned out that I still got it right, but I had doubt about it. But the number one tip that I can give you is just acknowledge that you might have not gotten it correct. In magic, they always say, "Don't run if you're not being chased," right? Because you'll be doing magic tricks for people with your cards, and some people they'll be watching your hands so closely, they'll be burning your hands, and they'll make you feel like you're going to make a mistake. But in magic, they always say, "Don't run if you're not being chased." And so I won't get into teaching magic tricks or anything like that, but it's just a principle to keep in mind in life is that nobody's chasing you down, and even those who are watching really really closely, all you do is you pick your moment to just say, oh, maybe well, whatever. In magic there's a sort of different thing, but I may not have heard your name correctly. Is it something like, and or did it start with a D or anything like that? And just share what it is, and then I turn it into a teaching principle and talk about how that you need to be listening, you need to pay attention, you need to be present in the room, and you need to just be kind to yourself and to others, and just share what's going on in your brain, because that's ultimately the greatest gift in the world, is just authenticity and transparency and working the magic to the extent that you can. And it's just beautiful. All memory should be premised on the truth and nothing but the truth. And so I hope that encourages you to go out and try these things, but you can practice at home. Hello, Maricella. Maricella's here from McAllen, Texas. Great to see you. Thanks for being here. So I hope that helped answer your question, Sandra. And that was a great question also from Solomon. Really appreciate that. Let's see. We got something here from... Oh, that's not an email. That's a spam. And that's another spammy spam. Let's see what else we got here. All right. So, Neugen says, I'm interested in the Magnetic Memory Method Master Plan. I'm a medical student and I have to study a lot about everything that's related to the human body, anatomy, physiology, pathology, etc. That will need more than 1,000 magnetic stations. If I do it 3 times forward, it would take 2 to 3 hours to finish one subject. So my question is, do you have any other strategies to put information into long-term memory? Oh, well, actually, it won't take you 2 to 3 hours to finish one subject. So that's the first thing. And most people will create 1,000 magnetic stations within 2 to 5 hours. Maybe 500. It depends. It depends on how you apply the technique. So even if you have to create more than 1,000 magnetic stations, what's the problem there? This is the whole point. If you really want to learn memory techniques and you want to learn information on mass, then you'll want to have that amount of spatial memory, and it's not a big deal. We teach you how to make it not a big deal. So you don't need 1,000 stations for what you want to do, I don't think, because if you get to intermediate levels with these techniques, you can reuse memory palaces in interesting ways that are non-problematic. But I don't see the problem with getting that number of stations at all. I don't. And it's very, very simple and clear to understand once you're in the training. And then in terms of the time that it takes to get it into long-term memory, Well, that's the beauty of how this works. And if you really understand the techniques, you're going to experience compounding, you're going to experience what I call rhizomatic memory, and you're going to create knowledge very, very quickly. And a lot of this stuff is just going to happen at levels you can't anticipate or understand until you get into it. But at the end of the day, it's all premised on Memory Palace networks and not getting confused by the numbers. So if you weren't here for the earlier parts of this live stream, we talked about numbers. We talked about the fear of numbers and how that gets in people's way. You can't let that happen. Same thing with business training, which we're talking about today. If you're just joining us, check out magneticmarymethod.com/win, the chance to win 10,000 bucks. Here's the thing, that 10,000 bucks is actually worth at least 100,000 bucks for the winner because of all the advice that they're going to receive. But then you might be thinking, oh, well, but starting a business costs X amount of dollars. If you let that fear of the number of dollars that starting a business costs get in the way, then that fear is going to rule your life, right? And it's the same thing with Memory Palace creation. So I would just encourage people to just put the numbers aside and dive in and really, really explore what expanding your spatial memory will do for you, because spatial memory expansion leads to autobiographical memory expansion, which gives you multiple tools for bridging figures and all of the things that make memory techniques work so well, especially when they're magnetic. So this is something very, very important to understand. So Sandra says, thank you very much, Anthony. Thank you, Sandra. A really great and compelling question. Andy's here. Hi, Andy. Thanks for saying hello. Glad that you could check this out, and going to check out the replay. Awesome. Hit the thumbs up if you're just joining us. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Rasmus says, gotta go. Okay, thank you for being here. Great questions, great participation, and thanks for saying goodbye. I love manners. Manners, I think, have really slipped on the internet, and that is not the greatest thing. And Joe Polish, speaking of this contest with the Genius Network, he says something very profound. He says, one of the best skills is to say please and thank you. And we have lost that so much in the internet. And you might be thinking, how can that be profound business advice? Well, look, common sense is not so common, right? And it's been lost a lot. There's people out there grabbing and give, and all this sort of stuff. And they're not even capable of saying please and thank you, right? And it's just so strange. You get used to it if you're in a position like myself, but I really appreciate everybody who does take the time to say just those kind things, because they are grease that can turn some pretty big wheels if you keep up with good manners and civil behavior. And of course, we've all seen on the internet the snide remarks of the people who have too much time on their hands, or they don't practice discernment, and they don't take care of observing themselves, and they leave comments that they regret later, or sadly enough, they don't regret sometimes, which is weird. But that's just the way the world is, and so it is. But I still think, and I really appreciate this about Joe Polish, is just teaching that fundamental common sense, knowing that common sense isn't so common. Please and thank you. It's a superpower. It's a superpower that everybody should have. All right. So, and anybody can. And so please go and check out this link, magneticmarymethod.com/win. If you don't know who Joe Polish is, if you don't know my business partner, Jonathan Levy, he created a beautiful video for you. Love for you to be able to watch that and see the invitation to win 10,000 bucks. Yes, it's for you if you are an entrepreneur now or you want to become an entrepreneur, but I think you will want to check it out even if that isn't for you, to plant the seed for what's possible and make sure that you know the name Jonathan Levy, you know the name Joe Polish, and you know the name Genius Network, because these are powerful things. And if you don't know the I Love Marketing podcast, wow, check it out. Powerful, powerful stuff. So Julie says, thanks, great session. Everyone, thank you, Julie. It's always good to see you. And by the way, Julie sent me this cup. Thank you for this cup. I still just tickled pink to have this cup. Always be yourself, unless you can be Batman. Then always be Batman. Dan's here from Wellington. 12 degrees. Awesome. Thanks for being here, Dan. Really great to see you. And Wellington's not so far from here. We can see it. No, but great to have you here. Thanks for saying hello. And let me know If you are an entrepreneur or have you ever thought of becoming one, that would be very wonderful to know. Let's see, maybe do a little bit more mailbag. So many to choose from. If you've got questions while you're here, let me know. Pop them in the chat. Another announcement, James Clear is going to be on the Magnetic Mary Method podcast. Really excited about that. Really honored too. This person is spamming me. You know, it's really cool. I get people asking me to sell their weird stuff on the Magnetic Mary Method podcast and so forth, and I constantly say no because their values are just not in line with what we're doing. All right, so here's from Jagoda. He says, I had a problem with the candle apple corner exercise, paradoxically because of the afterburn effect. As long as I recalled the candle in the still state, it was okay, although I had some problems with recreating the rest of the candle, not only the flame. But when I tried moving it with my imagination, spinning, moving forwards, backwards, letting it grow or shrink, it simply didn't work because the afterburn effect was keeping my flame in one place, and if the candle moved, the flame would also move. It was the thing that I was supposed to simplify, the exercise that added difficulty for me. I had no problem with imagining other things, apples and a couple of other things I experimented with. I imagined my light bulb shaped glass so plastic it was like seeing a movie. And the reason I had afterburn difficulty may be that I have too vivid of a developed imagination, which is causing it, not directly but always, a condition called closed eye visualization, CEV, which practically means that when I close my eyes, my mind is creating all sorts of pictures and scenes without my control over it. I know this can also be achieved by relaxation and deep meditation or drugs, but I had it since I can remember without trying. Maybe this is why I had those problems with the candle part of the exercise. Anyway, it's a great exercise, the parts I could do, and an amazing experience. Great. Okay, so Jagoda, he's cool. He has some cool chats in some previous videos here on the site, and that's great feedback. Thank you for that. And yeah, you know, the afterburn you don't have to experience because you don't have to light the candle. So that's a way to get over that. Um, that that will be interesting to explore. The candle exercise without the candle being lit. So give that a try if you are doing that exercise and having that experience. Let's see here. So I tend to not know what to do with people who don't write their names in their emails. Obviously, you're free to do that, but it's one of those things about manners in the current era. It's kind of odd that so many of us write to each other without saying who we are. But interesting. It's always just interesting. One of the things I try to do is not judge the world. The world is as it is. All right. So, okay, this is all about memorizing French. So, Martin says, I'm frustrated with my memory because I can remember quite a lot of information, but I can't remember it for a long time. Okay, well, that's an interesting issue. Memory palaces will certainly help because memory palaces are the tool that help you get the information into long-term memory very, very quickly. Very quickly. So we can go through mailbag for a long time, but if there are no questions here anymore, then I really want to be spending time with you all. And looks like we are fizzling out here. Yeah, there's a really interesting email from Cyril, but I'll skip that one because he's telling me about how we won't even get into it. Let's just say it's interesting. Thank you, Cyril. Yeah, so thank you everybody for being here today. Really appreciated the time that we could spend together. We're going to be talking about this contest until the end of the month, until that we have closed the doors, and those doors are going to close firmly. I really look forward to seeing you inside this contest if you're going to engage in it. And let me know if you have any questions about it whatsoever. It's magneticmarymethod.com/win. We'd love to have you participate And just so you have it in the chat, there's the link in the chat. And if you want to practice memorizing names, I can think of no room better to practice in than this one, because there are going to be some incredible entrepreneurs, and just entrepreneurs who know entrepreneurs. And 6 degrees of separation is a powerful thing, because it is the tool that brings you closer and closer together to more and more capable and competent entrepreneurs who can really help you with your business if you're in business. And if you don't know about the Branding You Academy project, then you'll want to check that out as well. And you can get linked up to that by following magneticmarymethod.com/win. And if you have any questions about memory that weren't covered today, then you can always get in touch and hit that thumbs up. Even if you're watching the replay, let me know down in the chat where you're from, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, and just generally be in touch. I always appreciate hearing from you, and communicate. Remember that tip from Joe Polish about please and thank you, and when you're writing, include your name. It's the power of names and being able to remember them is a wonderful thing. And sometimes when you are here and you use a name that is not your name, then I just respect, like Emerson's and Decwa, that you're using a name there. So even if I know your name and it's there, I catch myself and be, well, we want to respect privacy there. So you can always let me know if I have permission to use your name, and then we won't. Otherwise, I'll use your screen name to protect your privacy. Maricella says, thanks. I will see the reply again. I'll check the business in also the magneticmarymethod.com/win. Excellent, Maricella. Incidentally, if you already are in Branding You Academy, then you can still participate. So these are for people who are in Branding You Academy, not the Udemy version of Branding You, but the full 14-course suite. And if you're already in, excellent, be in. And generally, you do want to look at all the terms and conditions of the contest, because they are there. And I would strongly encourage you to also be sure to watch Jonathan Levy's live that he did for the Super Learner crew yesterday, and it was brilliant. I went through the whole thing myself. I learned about Gonzalo Cor's experiences with the course, and just many, many wonderful stories of success that we are seeing for people who want to, you might want to teach memory techniques yourself one day when you become a master of them. And we're very happy to help the next generation, even if you're older than us. We're very happy to help you through Branding You Academy. And that's what this contest is all about at magneticmarymethod.com/win. This $10,000 ticket is easily worth $100,000 if you're the person who's in that room and you are starting a business, or you want to be starting a business. So check that out. Oh, Deborah, I didn't know that. Thank you for letting me know. Now this gives me a wonderful relationship to the name, and there's some interesting things that have been coming up about native languages recently. So that's really wonderful. Am I pronouncing it right, Dekwa, when I say it that way? I don't, just since we're talking about names and so forth, I had I'm not sure what the politically correct term is, but a First Nations girlfriend for many years, and she had a beautiful, beautiful name. And there's many, many beautiful First Nations names, and I really, really, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful group of communities, and so many beautiful languages. Dekwa. Okay, so now we have things to work with. Dekwa. Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, now I'm getting back so many memories. Yeah, so this was a Shuswap name. So, I mean, just the word Shuswap is so beautiful. In any case, she didn't want her First Nations name used, so we never used it. But I always thought about it privately in my heart, and its meaning is very beautiful as well. So, excellent, excellent. So we're going to encode this into the mind, and one of the things that comes to mind for that is there's a magician, and there's an argument about his name, and it's spelt like this. He's a Canadian who really, a lot of the gambling, a lot of the tricks that are used with a deck of cards come from gambling, and he's known as the Professor. And some people say that it's pronounced Die Vernon, and most people use Die Vernon, but apparently it's supposed to be Day Vernon. So this is previous knowledge that I can make an association with. I've never met Die or Day Vernon. I've seen lots of pictures of him, though. I've seen videos of him performing and, doing all kinds of stuff where he shows some of the magic tricks in training and just demonstrates them and so forth. But now I have a basis here to remember this, right? So that's kind of cool. And it's interesting one because, and it's all the more memorable because I originally was calling it Dequa, but Dequa and Die and Day, they, whatever. Anyway, so that's the thing that comes to mind. And I would just challenge all of you to, or encourage you more than challenge you. But if you are encouraged by challenges, consider yourself challenged. Or if you're challenged by encouragement, that's not such a bad thing. Is I would just go in your mind and think of the connections that come up with names. And I mentioned earlier in the live stream that there are two kinds of memory exercises that you can do, and you can do passive memory exercise or you can do active memory exercise. So I mentioned a number of names today, and you can ask yourself later in the day or tomorrow morning, wherever it makes sense for you to do so, what were those three names? And if you didn't use any memory techniques to do so, then you can just ask yourself passively to recall them. That exercise in and of itself will be helpful for you. Or you can use memory techniques to go through the chat history now, figure out what they were, or watch the replay and find out what they were, and actually use memory techniques to memorize them. And then ask yourself, what were those names? So I'm going to be remembering that Rasmus was talking about how trade, T-R-A umlaut, D, is Swedish for tree. And if I want to hold that into long-term memory forever, there's a process to do that. Do I want to? Well, we'll see. But I think why not? I mean, that's a very interesting fact about the Swedish language. And there's a bell. Interesting bell. And I'm also going to remember that it's not Dequa, but Dequa. Great. So that one I will hold on to for sure. Maybe I will bind it together in a memory palace with a tree to remember this day, which was a very, very special day indeed. Thank you, everyone. I really, really appreciate the time that we were able to spend together today. I appreciate all the interaction, and I really, really want you to know that your memory is very precious to me. The improvement of your memory is very important to me. And if there's some way that I can say something that will help you take action with the memory training, it's always self-study in the same way that business development always requires you to do the work and figure out better things. Let me know. Check out this contest at magneticmemorymethod.com/win and take action. The improvement that you seek in your life is available to you right now, today. You just need to take action. So come and check out this contest at magneticmemorymethod.com/win. Thank you again, everybody, for an amazing time. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And until we have a chance to speak again, I hope to see you in the contest at magneticmemorymethod.com/win, and keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye, everyone. Take care, and talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.